just like to say thanks to Nuance Communications for putting this event on. Really appreciate it, Derek. I'm not going to try to bore you too much tonight. So what I've done is distilled some of the training, some of the aspects of the training services that we provide into something that's easy to understand and something that I can deploy to a group. Normally we do the training one-on-one because we've got to make adjustments to your computer and change your vocabulary, that sort of stuff. But there's a couple of key things which you can do with Dragon which make an enormous difference to it. Some of them you might have seen, some of you might not. It's called a three-step sort of program, but really there's about 20 steps. I just say 3 to make it sound more comfortable for you. But I'll try to get through it. If you've got any questions, we will do a quick Q&A at the end. So let's get started. I'm using the Dragon Professional Individual 15 and the Nuance Power Mic 3. This is quite a good handheld microphone. It's got noise cancelling and things I can do to move around, that sort of thing. Philips and Olympus also have very good devices very similar to this, and there's representatives from those two organisations here if you're interested in other devices similar to this. All right. First thing is, if your Dragon isn't set up correctly from the beginning, you're pretty much wasting your time. There are a couple of key things which I see regularly which are wrong and will have an enormous impact on your experience. Will be frustrating, difficult to use, but they're really easy to check. So I'm going to show you those now. So some of this is a bit technical, unfortunately, but Dragon is a complex and powerful product. So you've just got to accept that you've got to get under the hood a little bit. And as I said, I'll try to make it as simple as I can. So this Dragon bar at the top, can everyone see that? This is what we call the classic Dragon bar. If you're running the later versions, it'll be a black floating bar. I'm using this just to show you that there are different settings, and I'll take you back to it in a minute to show you how it looks. But for now, the most important thing that you can do when you go home is to check this. So you click on the little profile button up the top, and you go to Open User Profile, and I've got a profile I have set up for myself and one for our dear PM. He's not here tonight, sorry about that. But I'm using him as a digital transcription example later on. So if I click Properties, I've highlighted my name. I'll click Properties. So it tells you a whole bunch of stuff about how you set up. If you've got any of this wrong, pretty much Dragon isn't going to work well, if at all. Okay, so the most important thing is that you've got the right accent modelling here. You can see Australian there. When you first install Dragon on your computer, it can actually install different regions. South Asia, Southeast Asia, New Zealand, Australia. If you don't tick the right box or if you don't let it do it automatically, it could load the wrong accent model and your experience will be quite poor. If you accidentally load the US accent model, it'll be very poor, as a rule, with an Australian accent. So that will tell you immediately if you've got a problem. If that's wrong, there's nothing you can do. You have to start again with the profile. The second thing is, make sure that the microphone that you're using is actually the microphone that you're using. That sounds a bit silly, but it isn't. This microphone is configured as this power mic, and you can see that listed here, right? But there are other audio devices on my computer, such as the webcam. I might have a Bluetooth headset. I might have any number of other devices. Maybe there's the kids that plug the gaming headset in. So what will happen then is I'll pick up my microphone or my headset that I think I'm using. I'll be dictating into it, but in reality, maybe another device, particularly the webcam, might be picking up my voice. And that'll deliver very poor accuracy because you think you're dictating into this, but you're really dictating into another device connected to your computer. It's not super common, but it happens a bit. And if it does happen, you'll get sort of strange results. So it's certainly worth checking. This tells me a few other things. The new version of Dragon does training on the fly. I'm sure you all remember having to read Dilbert or the Kennedy speech and so forth. We don't do that with the Dragon Professional Individual 15 or the Mac version 6. But over time, it will automatically run a tuning to my voice, a tuning program, acoustic optimization, I think it's still called. And that will then go yes, and it's learning about your voice as you're using it. That's a new thing in the new version if you haven't tried the new version. It eliminates that requirement to do all the reading that you're probably used to doing. So that's worth doing. The audio setup, that has to be done. At the beginning where you've got to check your microphone volume, you've done that, which brings me to the next thing. When you move your computer or you move to a new environment, or if you get a new microphone, you can check the audio here. So audio, check microphone. It's going to calibrate the microphone to the acoustics of the room or your audio environment. If you move from, say, a sort of echoey, noisy environment like this to your home office, then you sound a little bit differently. And this check only takes a few seconds, but it does reset the volume of your microphone, and it's absolutely worth doing. I do it about once a week, but you don't necessarily have to do that. But you just run through this and you read a little story to it, and it's just doing an audio calibration. So absolutely do that anyway. Now you've seen this tonight, just check those settings, just quickly again, profile, open user profile. That's all your settings of your profile here under properties, and check your audio here. Okay? So that's the initial setup. Okay, so some general comments. If your computer is not in a good state, then your Dragon will not be in a good state. You only need to look at what's happening with this crypto locker in the last few days to know that if you haven't updated your software, if your computer hasn't got good antivirus, if you've got too much stuff running in the background, then Dragon will have difficulty running, and it could make it slow, or all sorts of strange things can happen. So if you're not confident with Windows or even with your Mac, get someone who is and get them to help you. That's probably the best investment you can make, is to have a computer that is well organised and got the right sort of updates. Otherwise, you'll run into problems. Power management settings. With a laptop, I'm sure there's a few laptop or notebook users here. When they go into battery, sometimes they'll slow your computer down. It'll set a lower setting for the amount of processing that your computer will do. That can slow it down. I'm not going to specifically get into that. It's a bit in the weeds, as it were. But if you do have a slow computer, sometimes it could be because you're on battery power, and you need to tell Windows that you want full power available when you're on battery. If anyone's got any questions about that, ask me when I'm finished, and I'll take you through it. And there's that check microphone again. And the last thing was, make sure you're using a good microphone. This is particularly designed for Dragon. We use this in medical and legal fields often, or the Philips or the Olympus versions of this. Very high quality noise cancelling. It allows me to navigate and move a mouse around. You probably see that. Also lets me navigate certain fields within forms, so I can fill out a form quickly. I'm going to try to demonstrate that as well. But if you're using a headset, don't use one of them short, sort of cheap Bluetooth ones, which are, a couple of inches long. Use a boom with a noise cancelling element in it. If you don't invest in good equipment, you're not going to be able to get good results. So, and we can recommend some, and absolutely Nuance have the hardware compatibility list on their website. I can't remember the exact URL, but if you Google Nuance Dragon hardware compatibility, you'll get the list, and it will tell you which microphones work, and it rates them by accuracy. So and it is updated quite a bit, so it's quite useful. Okay. Right, so this is really important, and I'm going to try to demonstrate some of this. Dragon learns from listening to your voice, and it also learns from the corrections. So when Dragon makes an error, you've got to instruct it that it's made an error, or it will not learn from that error. Often users become confused between correcting that text, which educates Dragon, which makes it more accurate, and just editing the text. So I'm going to try to demonstrate that. Start Dragon Pad. Okay, so there's a little basic window. So if I were to, it probably won't make an error, but I'll do the correction anyway. I'm now dictating directly into my computer using Dragon Professional Individual 15, full stop. All right, so normally you would read that, you might do a couple of paragraphs. I'd recommend a paragraph at a time and do a check. It's important to check the quality of your dictation within a paragraph or so, full stop. So you would normally go along, you check, you'd probably write something a bit more sophisticated than that, hopefully, and then if it made an error, you would need to instruct it. And the way to do that is to use the correct command. And that means Dragon made a mistake. So if it made a mistake here, okay, it hasn't. I'm just going to correct a word to show you what it looks like. Correct professional. Dragon Professional Individual. I don't know if you could hear that, but it's playing back my voice. You would then dictate or type in the correction, and the program would learn. I'll try to hold this up. It's not really the best way of playing it back, but... Dragon Professional Individual. You hear that? So it's playing back my voice. I've set that in Dragon because I want to hear what I've said. I want to make sure that I'm correcting it to exactly what I've said. Otherwise, you're confusing Dragon. You're teaching it that black is white. So dictate, look at making corrections. when it makes a mistake. So purely talking about Dragon making an error in how it's listening to your voice. It might not know the word though. So then we're going to get to the vocabulary in a minute. So it might be hearing you perfectly, but it doesn't know what the word is. That's a separate issue. It will add the word to your vocabulary through that correction process, but it's good to understand what's going on so you can manually add surnames, acronyms to the vocabulary. I'm going to cover that as well. Now, if we wanted to just do a normal edit, if we wanted to just change something, Dragon got it right, but I want to change my mind, select 15. So I've selected it verbally, 16. So that's not teaching the program anything. I'm just educating it. I'm not educating. I'm just telling it I want a different output. Okay? So it's really important to understand the difference between correcting the program and just editing. Editing like manually selecting a word. It's exactly the same as manually selecting a word and just deleting it. All right. Persistent errors like sounding words. 4, 4 and 4 is a good example. Dragon uses context to know whether it's putting a 4, FOR, FOUR, numeral 4. If you want to force a number with Dragon, you can say numeral. Okay? There are several options, which I'll get to in a minute, where you can tell it below a certain number, below 10, give me the word as opposed to the numeral. But it generally uses context. So if it says 4 May 2017, it'll put numeral 4. So it will do that automatically, but sometimes you want to be able to use the vocabulary editor to manage that. And a good example is with acronyms. So I'm going to try to add an acronym to show you the process that you can follow to make it compatible with the sort of language you're using. Switch to DragonPad. So the example I'm going to use is, I often do use, is ATO, full stop. Go to end. New paragraph. Unfortunately, we all have to deal with the ATO, full stop. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. I'm saying ATO, okay? ATO, it's an acronym, which is the word, so it's very easy to understand and easy to deal with. Now, what about the word ASIC? Now, all of a sudden, I'm not saying ASIC, I'm saying ASIC. The Dragon is thinking, well, on one hand, you're saying ATO, why aren't you saying ASIC? Open vocabulary editor. But it deals with it by allowing what we call like sounding. Can everyone see that okay? I'm not sure what the resolution's like. So it's got a phonetic spelling of the word ASIC as ASIC, because that's how I'm saying it. It's like a nickname. With ATO, I'm simply saying the letters. Then all of a sudden, I've switched to giving it a nickname. I'll give you another example. It's already built into this because it's an Australianised version. Another example is DFAT, something I had to deal with when I worked for Defence quite a bit. We are not saying DFAT. DFAT is really a nickname. New paragraph. If you're going overseas, it's important to consult DFAT. So it's not going to put it down because it doesn't understand it. It isn't in its vocabulary. Open vocabulary editor. I could have corrected it, but I've already sort of shown you that. I want to show you how to do it manually. So I'm going to say to it, okay, what am I saying? That's what I want, so I'm going to click add. But what I'm really saying is that. Phonetically, I'm saying DFAT because it's a nickname. So I'm applying that to it. I can train it. I'm not going to train it. I'm going to see if Dragon can just learn it without training it. DFAT. New paragraph. DFAT. So now it's added to my vocabulary. It understands a word. It will get it every time. It's a very powerful and underused feature of Dragon. Managing that vocabulary by understanding that phonetically some words just simply do not match how they're spelt. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of things you can do with that. You can add words from lists. You can download a list of acronyms on the internet and feed it to Dragon as a text file. It will add them, and then you could add how they sound later on. There's a whole bunch of stuff which I can't get to today, but Dragon is more than capable of handling specialised vocabularies. The important bit is to understand how to input them so they actually come out how you say them. So, okay. This accuracy tuning, Dragon, after it's heard enough of your voice over time, it'll run a little tuning operation where it becomes more accurate. Because this new version uses the deep learning, it doesn't require you to read the stories, as I mentioned earlier, so it has to run this accuracy tuning. It should prompt you to run it automatically and say, I have enough data on your voice run. It'll pop up, and while it's running, you can't use Dragon, but you can run it manually. It's important to do it. And it's here. So that actually improves the accuracy in little steps. So you can manually run it, or it will force you to run it once it's heard a certain amount of information about your voice. Another thing that is really worth doing, if you've invested in using Dragon effectively by building its vocabulary up, by training it, by doing all those things that make it accurate over time, you don't want to lose that information. It's particularly important if you are adding a lot of words, or you are putting a lot of different email addresses or acronyms. You don't want to start again. You don't want to train it again. So like any data, if you like it, it's important to keep it. So now I've got this written on a guide. I don't have them with me, but we've got a sign-up form if you want me to email it out. It explains all this in one page. But I'll show you now, so don't despair if you don't remember how to do this. I've got it written down. And also we've got a video of how to do this. So you go Profile, Manage User Profiles. You select the profile in question. And you just export it. I would export it to a USB stick, to a network drive, to somewhere where you can keep it, little portable hard drive. If something goes wrong with my computer, if my computer gets stolen or I drop it, I'm not having to start from scratch. And that is very frustrating. Often people will stop using Dragon if they've really built up a good profile and lost it because they think it's too much work. Fortunately, with the newer version, it learns a lot faster, so it's not as bad, but the vocabulary is important to keep. So export your profile to something and throw it in the drawer at home or at work so you don't have to start again. And you can even move it to another computer. So you can load Dragon on another computer, maybe you've got a desktop, a laptop, and you can load and immediately bring in your entire profile. It'll be accurate, it'll have the right words in the vocabulary, and you're ready to go. So it's a huge time saver. We do this automatically. Every time we train someone, we export the profile for them, and it saves them a lot of pain if something goes wrong, and something will eventually go wrong with your computer. So be prepared. Really important with Dragon to shut it down. If you leave it open all the time, it doesn't get a chance to save. Okay? So on exit, it will save what I've done today. I added the word DFAT, I gave it some audio, it's going to save the audio. Right? If I don't exit Dragon properly, I'm not going to go there, but if I go Windows shutdown, the normal button, if you just shut it down, it's not going to save. And as its Windows is collapsing, it may damage the profile, the Dragon, the acoustic profile of your voice and all your vocabulary. You don't want that. It's really important to exit Dragon each day so it does a save. Okay? It's just a basic step. Start Dragon in the morning. When you finish for the day, exit it properly. You won't have any issues. If you do, you've already backed it up because I just showed you how to do that. Everybody's happy. Okay? All right, that's the three main principles. I'll just quickly go over it again. Make sure your computer is in the right state to be running Dragon. If you don't know how to do that, just get someone to help. Make sure your microphone's working well and that you're using the actual microphone that you think you're using. That's the main takeaway from that. Understand the difference between correcting Dragon when it's wrong by saying correct phrase or correct word, as opposed to an edit where you just want to change something. Dealing with like-sounding words and acronyms, use the Open Vocabulary Editor. And this is the most useful tool you'll ever find with Dragon. It is a bit under the hood, but it will make an enormous difference to your experience. I'll quickly show you, depends how we go for time, how to add words on a mass basis. But just to go over the three things. Okay, and then back your profile up in the way that I show. Export the profile. Make sure you're exiting Dragon correctly. Those things will have a big impact on your experience with the software and on your overall accuracy, and it'll make it more enjoyable to use. Okay, this is a pretty basic one, but I'm sure most people here don't have this issue, but I'll just say it anyway. Make sure you're thinking about a complete sentence before you're dictating. Most people who have been dictating all their lives, that'll be automatic. But if you're new to Dragon, try to think of complete sentences. I've trained a lot of kids who have got dyslexia, that sort of thing. They really have trouble with complete sentences. But Dragon is looking at that sentence and the grammar and the sentence structure as you're saying it and predicting it. So you need to make sure, it's important to try to think at least half a full sentence at a time, and make sure you're using the punctuation, full stop, new paragraph, new line, open quote, open bracket, close bracket, / and so forth. It gives it, the punctuation is important. And an obvious example is if I finished a sentence and didn't say full stop, statistically I'm going to say and next. So Dragon will go, well, that affects its logic. So make sure you're always using full stop, comma, new paragraph. It affects how it's working. It's not just about making the document look tidy, it actually affects accuracy. So that's a good tip. Now, Dragon has the capacity to learn quickly from documents. I don't know if anyone's used this, I'm sure some of you have. This is extremely useful. So you can feed it a word. I went to a solicitor's office recently and they had about 500 documents. So we fed through about 50 at a time and it extracted all the clients' names, different addresses, email addresses, and it stacked it into that editor, which I opened earlier. The words will appear here and have a special custom vocabulary with the red crosses. That means you've added them. But simply put, you click on Learn from Documents and tell Dragon where your documents are. Even if they're on a network drive or on a USB, it will scan them and mass add your custom vocabulary. So you could teach it a specific technical vocabulary by getting it to read those documents without having to individually punch each word in. So it's very useful. On email, it looks at your sent email because obviously that's the ones you've written, not, received isn't necessarily representative of your work, but it will get all the surnames and the different sorts of words that you're using and it will stack them into the vocabulary, and then that's going to add to the richness of the vocabulary that you're using and it'll be specifically tailored for your requirements. So that's worth running as well. I've got some macro commands. So Dragon Professional and above has a capacity to execute certain functions by voice. Start Microsoft Outlook. So I'm just launching a program by saying start whatever it's called, it'll launch it. So reply to message. So that's a command, it's not doing it, and it's not doing it, but it is executing it. Forward to John. So so there we go. So it's just a little email I made for forwarding, didn't quite go that well actually, but pop-ups. But Dragon has a whole bunch of built-in commands for Outlook. Close window. No. New message. Body field. You can dictate directly into email using Dragon full stop. Subject field. Dragon presentation. All caps that. So that's a pretty straightforward one. Some of these commands are built in, some of them I've made myself. I'm mostly showing you built-in commands for now. I'll show you one that I've made. Okay. So all the commands we've made are here. So new message. New message. Go to body. Insert standard reply. So that's the one that I've made to show you how it works. So this is obviously not a built-in command. It enables me to reply to a generic type of email, and then I've got these buttons on the Power Mic, and these are works in a similar way on Philips and Olympus products. I can jump between the different variables. Okay. Bob. Individual 15. 24 hours. Sydney, 300. So I can do quick replies to emails. We particularly do this, we've been doing it with real estate. I know Tony here does this sort of thing. You can reply sort of to standard sort of emails and then just change the variables that are relevant. So that's a command that I've made. And as I said, if you've got Dragon Professional or above, you can create these. It's just a matter of learning how to do it. I can't really take you through the specifics of it now, but it's good to know it has that capability and it can save a lot of time. Here's one I did for a financial planner. Where is it? It's called insert investment time frame. Yeah. Select all. Delete that. Insert investment time frame. So that's the standard reply they were using in there's a financial planning company in Brisbane. They'd use it all the time when people ask them a certain type of question. So it just spits out some text. So that's just a more basic version of what I showed you with the other command that had the fields in it. So there's very useful features of Dragon that some of you may just not be familiar with, and it's good to know that they're there, and certainly I'd encourage you to experiment. Some of it's a bit technical, but you can get help if you need it. Okay. We'll go back to the presentation. Okay, so that's the examples of the macro commands. Now we have, I wrote this guide, having trained users for about 17 years. There's a whole bunch of commands you can use with Dragon, and it's very difficult to remember them. And each application has its own commands. Outlook has certain commands, Word has different commands. It's hard to remember them. I've tried to distill them into ones I think sort of your average user would use in the first 6 months. So we have this guide. I've got a form if you'd like me to email it to you. It's just up there. John, wave John. John's my Sydney manager. If you'd like us to send you the PDF of this condensed, it's like a cheat sheet, I suppose. Absolutely see one of us and we'll email it out to you. Also, if our newsletter, if you sign up to our newsletter on our website, we'll also email that out. Also, I make some training videos. There's a few familiar faces there. So we try to do some of our training online using YouTube. I know that they're recording this session tonight, so that's something you could use to review some of the more advanced features that I've shown you. But also, if you visit my YouTube channel, just voice recognition, it's a useful thing to do. All right, that's about it from me. As I said, if you want to shoot me an email, there's my email address on our website. If you want to sign up for the PDF cheat sheet, see John and myself. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Derek.
Thank you, Russell.